I'm Ann Schindler, and today's the day, our monthly community chat with Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan. She joins us to take your calls and answer your questions. We also sit down with members of Jacksonville's own Black Kids ahead of their concert at Intuition Aleworks tonight. Then a 24-hour marathon run to raise money for impoverished senior citizens. But first, it's a monthly segment we've ingeniously titled Ask the Mayor. So bring it, Jacksonville. Do you have questions or concerns about city government? Ideas you want to share? Mayor Donna Deegan is here, so give us a call at 549-2937. Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Message us on Facebook and Instagram or tag us on X at FCC On Air. Donna Deegan, good morning.
Good morning, Ann. And can I just take a moment to say congratulations on your new post? I'm excited that you're there, and I know you're doing a great job. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, but I'm a tad bit under the weather this morning, and I figured best not to share that with you if I could possibly stand it. So
I appreciate you joining us despite feeling lousy, so hang in there.
No COVID though. I'm happy to report several tests, and it's just a bad cold. But oh man, I feel like I'm a little run down at the moment, but hopefully on the way back up.
Well, you've been doing a lot of appearances and shaking a lot of hands, and so it's not a surprise that you've come across a bug. But
no.
Well, feel better. Donna Deegan, you're a former journalist, so you know how this goes. We're going to start with an easy one. You just unveiled how you want to spend $26 million. You had the city council earmark this money in the budget for some of your priorities. So what's on the list?
Well, there's so much stuff on the list, Ann. I mean, I could take the whole time that we have talking about that. But I think a lot of the things are things you've heard about. We're going hard on programs for homelessness and affordable housing. A lot of money, more than $3 million for literacy. Youth civic engagement is on the list. We're going to have a youth at work partnership that we're committing more than $1 million to. There's all sorts of money in there for health programs. You saw we just kicked off the Get Covered Jacks program to encourage people to get covered with affordable health care. And education is such a big piece of everything that we're doing, but it would save us so much money if we had people that were accessing low cost or free health care as opposed to going to our emergency rooms, which is just driving up the cost, as you know, for everybody. We've got more than $1.5 million for small business development programs, veterans programs. We're committing some money to start the process of building a veteran center, which we talked about during the campaign. And of course, we've invested millions in arts and culture and in artists in our community. So those are just a few of the things, but we're really excited about the opportunity to move some of these initiatives forward in Jacksonville. In addition to what we've already done, in the budget previously, these are some of these are feeding programs that we think are working well, and some of them are programs that we're hoping to grow. So just excited to get in front of council, and we've been talking to council about this now for weeks and months, and hopefully they've got a good synopsis and we're ready to go.
Let's talk a couple of fun items on this list. Wi-Fi in city parks. So one of the expenditures you've earmarked for. Tell us, where would that be, and what's the goal there?
Well, the goal is to get Wi-Fi into city parks. We're looking at all the districts, but obviously we're especially interested in getting that Wi-Fi into areas that where there's a dearth of that. And so we're identifying those places now. We're talking to council and trying to find the places that are going to be best suited for that. But it's obviously something that is a need, and that a lot of us have been talking about for a long time. So I think people will be excited about that.
Another one that caught my eye was edible trees.
Edible trees.
Yeah.
Goodness, now you're talking to me about something I'm not sure
orchids
okay.
that you can, like trees that are being planted in a climate change capacity, but that are also,
right.
Fruits and nuts and stuff.
Well, right, yeah. So that sort of accomplishes two things, right? You help to get more fruits and things into people's households, but also it's an opportunity for us to have more trees in places that we need them.
Right on. Okay. So listeners, what are your thoughts about the mayor's budget priorities, or are there issues in your community you want addressed? Give us a call at 549-2937 or shoot us an email at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media. We've got a couple of comments. Mark sent an email He says you often describe JEA as a city gem owned by the people, yet JEA's war on residential rooftop solar is well known throughout the state. Their stance on net metering is unique in Florida, paying only 30 cents on the dollar for excess solar power put back on the grid. That's based on the false premise that solar users can be a burden on those who can't afford or choose not to have solar panels. Because of this, most new installations require large, unfriendly, and environmentally unfriendly battery banks. Is there any plan to address this taking of power from the people? And he adds, best wishes, and you're doing a great job besides this JEA thing with a wink emoji.
Listen. I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of Jay So. I think he is doing a good job at JEA, and I think they've got actually a good board over there. I think that, frankly, Ann, we started pretty far behind the 8 ball on a lot of things, including the septic tank issues. So I think that Jay is on the same page in terms of wanting to increase solar. I think there have been moves in that direction. As you know, this is something we should have invested more in, 20, 30 years ago. And now we're up against a lot of different market problems with that. But I think we are moving in the right direction when it comes to solar. It's just going to take a little while. But I think Jay understands the need for that, and I think we'll get there.
Mayor, you've been getting some heat on some issues of no-bid contracts. I want to talk about that briefly, particularly
Sure.
a $300,000 sole source contract that was given to a firm hired to do consulting, lobbying, and grant writing for the city. You made winning federal grants a campaign priority, a lot of money sitting on the table, but what about the fact that this contract was given without going out through the usual process for contracting?
Let's do talk about that, because it is extraordinarily important. We have a relatively small window this year to take advantage of a whole lot of money that is out there for infrastructure, for climate, for transportation, for you name it. I mean, there is a ton of federal grant money available out there. And so what we did is we went through a process of looking at all the companies that were available to us. And we said, who has everything we need? And we felt that Langton Consulting had what we needed the most. They are prolific in grant writing, which was key for us. They offer lobbying. They offer policy help. Those were 3 things we felt were critically important. Brittany Norris, our head of intergovernmental affairs, did a great job, I thought, of researching that. And then we did go through the process. This is something that's constantly lost in when people talk about this. We put all that information out there. We went through the procurement process, which you heard our procurement department discuss, that was completely transparent and open. There was a 7-day period where that lived, where anybody could challenge it, any company, any council person. And if that had happened, then we would have had to go back and do another dive there. But the bottom line is, this went through the process that is in place, and nobody had any objection. And it wasn't until after this was done, and frankly, after I raised the specter of looking at this process again, after the budget went through, and there were several single source contracts that were given where this happened. So what I'm going to suggest to you is, there's a lot of political theater going on here. I am perfectly happy, and as you know, absolutely anxious to discuss how this process works going forward for the entirety of city government. But I think Councilman Howland, who chairs the Finance Committee, has asked to have a list of single source contracts that the city engages in every time, I believe, the Finance Committee meets, and he'll get that list every time, and I think he'll find that list absolutely illuminating. But it's something that I'm certainly happy to take a look at going forward. But this was a transparent process that followed the system, and frankly, we have to go as far and as fast as we can to get this money in this year, and we're already writing the RFP for this process next year, which will take about 6 months. So we'll start that process again in about 6 months. But I'm going to see how much money we can bring in between now and then.
Gotcha. And so, whether it went through the process, that's kind of one discussion. But I know that our friend David Bauerlein at the Florida Times-Union says in his research, he found that there's several firms that appear to have or do much of the same work, this lobbying, consulting, grant writing, trifecta. Are you confident that your team looked deeply enough to justify this as a sole source contract?
Yeah, I think that Brittany did a great job there, and I trust her. Look, like I said, this is a process that we put through the paces of what is in place, and I would ask David, send me those companies, show me where they have all those three things. We didn't find that, but at the end of the day, this is going to stay in place. This is going to stay in place for this year, and in about 6 months, that RFP will go out again, and we'll start all over again.
I have got a call here, Mayor, from Mark on the west side. I believe he's got a comment about the recent Jaguars game. Good morning, Mark. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Mark, do we have to talk about the recent Jaguars game?
No, actually, I don't think it's a recent one, but thank you for going on the show. And I did not see this, so if I'm wrong, I apologize up front. But a friend of mine told me that one of the earlier Jaguar games, he saw some news blurb or something where you were attending the game and that you were in the skybox, the Shad Khan skybox, which, if that is true, I would think that's highly inappropriate, and I hope it's not true. But like I said, I didn't see it.
It's not true. No, we have. I'll tell you where I am. Frankly, if I had my way, I'd still be in my season tickets, which are in the north end zone. But the security folks don't really like that much. So there is a box that I share with the city council members. All of us are together in one box. Shad Khan is in his box. I have not ever been in Mr. Khan's box since I've been mayor. It wouldn't change anything that I'm going to do as far as dealing with the Jaguars are concerned. But I agree. I don't think the optics would be good, and it wouldn't be appropriate, and I have not done it. So when you see me up in any box, that's the box I'm in. I'm in the city box with the city council.
You're in the assigned box that maybe isn't always that fun. Thanks for calling, Mark. Appreciate the call. We also have a call here from Jason. Oh, excuse me. It's Javon from Tampa. He's got some comments about the World of Nations celebration. Good morning, Javon, and welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. And I have moved to Tampa from Jacksonville. My family and community helped to organize the African Village at the World of Nations for most of the 30 years that the event has existed. And there's been some recent changes to the way, people participate in that event that are going to make it very difficult for vendors and the organizations like ours who make that event what it is. And over the years, World of Nations has gone from 4 days to including field trips that used to be a real highlight, would see more than 150,000 people over the course of that long weekend, to now an event that seems to be struggling and not really getting the support from the city to make it workable for the organizations that do it or the community who really love that event. And I'm sure anybody listening who's ever been to World of Nations, especially back in the early 2000s when there were fireworks and things, can really attest to just how phenomenal it was. So my question is, one, can the mayor maybe put some attention on what's happened with those changes? But two, where does the mayor see events like World of Nations fitting into the image and the desirability of the city as a place where people want to visit and stay? Good question. Javon, what do you have to say, Mayor?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Javon, in terms of how important events like that are. I can't claim an extensive knowledge of exactly what you're discussing, but I will certainly look into that. As far as where I see these things in terms of my administration, I think you've heard me say many, many times that I want to highlight the many different communities that are here. I think the fact that we have such a diverse mosaic quilt of folks in Jacksonville is our absolute strength and one of the things that draws people to our city. And so I think events like World of Nations are critically important and would like to lift events like that. I've already spent a lot of time in some of the other cultural events that we've had in the city, and I think that's one of the ones that we absolutely should raise up.
Call from Bill in Orange Park. He's got a question, I believe, about tax credits. Good morning, Bill. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. How you doing?
Great.
My question is, Has the city sat down and did a complete evaluation as to whether the tax credits they offer corporations to move into the city really a viable program, and is it effective? Because if you look at the way corporations are doing business today, especially in the last 10 or 15 years, it's not the same process that they were doing when that process was initiated. For instance, a lot of the entry-level positions now are outsourced to facilities management companies, and these companies, in a lot of cases, are from out of state, and they really don't have an interest in, the development of the people working for them. In a lot of cases, if a person in the corporation sees a job that they like to apply for, they have to quit the facilities job and then inquire about working for the corporation. The other issue is outsourcing in terms of contracting. Corporations today take advantage of what they call single source contracting, where basically they'll go to one vendor for a specific product, and that vendor will supply the product worldwide, but it leaves local vendors out of the loop, or they'll get involved in regional situations, which leaves local vendors out of the loop.
Well,
one of the other things that are...
Bill, I might just give the mayor an opportunity to respond to a couple of those. Mayor, what do you have to say? Who's keeping an eye on the tax credits that are given to big businesses?
Well, look, I think that we have to look at that every time we talk with a business about coming to Jacksonville. But I think those are certainly parts of incentivizing businesses to come here. I mean, we have a lot of natural amenities here that are attractive to business. We have low taxes, lowest taxes in the state. Obviously, our state has no income tax. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of instances in which it is not so critically important. When we're talking about development, that's a different deal. But I'm not exactly sure if he's got somebody in particular in mind.
Nor I. We have an email from Chris. He says, please ask the mayor, this is reference to what we were discussing about the sole source contract issue. Please ask the mayor if Councilman Howland contacted her office before he went to the media with his concerns about the Langston contract. Did he?
Yeah, we were in contact with Councilman Howland's office, repeatedly. He had asked us questions. We had given him answers to all of his questions. We have obviously council liaisons, and we have our intergovernmental affairs director, all of whom had spoken with Councilman Howland before any of this ever went to the media. So the truth is, he had the answers to his questions before any of this, went public. I think that a lot of times, politics plays a role in these types of things. And while I am always happy to discuss fiscal responsibility with council or anybody else, I think that certainly we have been very open and very forthright with Councilman Howland and with everybody. I think that at some point I made, when I was asked about certain appropriations to charitable organizations and others from council, I mentioned publicly in the media that perhaps would be best for us to revisit the process, and I think that did not go over well with some members of the council. And look, if that is the case, then let's all discuss that. I think what happened is that became really sort of a political football, which may have led to this latest discussion. So,
and you're talking about raising questions.
Politics.
You're talking about raising questions that the city council appropriated, for instance, to Firewatch, which Councilman Howland is associated with, or Jacoby Pittman, Councilmember Jacoby Pittman's charity, that didn't go through the usual grant application process.
Yeah, I simply suggested that we might want to take a look at the transparency of that entire process, and I think that's where he came back and said, well, let's talk about the transparency of your process. And I think let's talk about all of it. I am perfectly open and willing, as I said, to look at the entire process of how all of us vet what we do, and let's make that as transparent and as viable a process for the people of Jacksonville as we possibly can. We all want to be responsible for our tax dollars, and I think that it's a good topic to discuss. But I think that's really how all of that probably came about.
I mean, I would say just as a observer, I would be interested in seeing who receives the sole source contracts on a routine basis. I think that that's good hygiene for the city. You're comfortable
Sure,
with that?
I'm absolutely comfortable with it. Have actually gone through that list myself ever since that question was called. So it will be interesting to see if we actually talk through those at every finance meeting or how that's going to go. But absolutely for that. I am for shining a light on any of that stuff that folks want to take a look at. I think it is good hygiene.
We have a call from Chris in Clearwater. I believe he's got a comment about Wi-Fi in city parks. Good morning, Chris. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I think it wouldn't be a wise idea to increase the density of electromagnetic fields, since if you do a search, you'll find many clinical studies that pollinators are affected by the electromagnetic fields. And these are microwaves that we're already bathed in by the cell towers, wireless routers, the cordless phones, smart meters, Bluetooth devices, even baby monitors, and other electromagnetic fields from the power lines. And so I'd encourage you to do some searching for these clinical studies. Just do a search electromagnetic field pollinators. Do that search term online. There's a
Thank
good
you,
site
Chris.
called
Mayor,
Empowered
what do you have to
Movement.
say about that? A concern? I mean, I'm not sure the science is strong on health concerns over Wi-Fi in public places, but your thoughts?
Well, there are certain areas of town, especially that need that more than others, and I think that's probably what we would look at. But I certainly, absolutely, as you know, I'm very open to looking at all manner of research when it comes to especially environmental concerns or concerns like that. So I'm happy to look at that.
Mike asking us on X, what is the status on Confederate monument removal in Springfield Park, renaming that park to Ben Fraser Park, and starting community meetings to address all monuments, et cetera, that glorify the Confederacy, segregation, and oppression. I'll note that there is a bill introduced by a local lawmaker, Dean Black, who is asking the state to pass a law that would allow the governor to remove any public elected official who removed a, quote, historic marker, and issue a bill that seems directly aimed at the Confederate monument removal issue. So help us understand all of that, Mayor Deegan.
Well, as you well know, Ann, I have said for many years that I think that monument needs to be removed, and I am still very focused on that. At this point, there does not seem to be a lot of interest in council to go there, but we're continuing to have those discussions, and I'm continuing to look at all the options that are out there. The bottom line is we need to decide what kind of city that we want to be going forward, and I don't think that in the middle of a largely black neighborhood that we need a monument to a time when we did not recognize each other's humanity. I think that's detrimental. I think it hurts business in our community. As I've said before, I don't think any business wants to come to a city that is still litigating the Civil War. I don't think that is something that is helpful to us. In terms of this bill, I think it is a bill that was clearly aimed at this administration because I have been such a vocal supporter of taking those monuments down. And I think, frankly, if you've read the bill, it appears to me to be wholly unconstitutional. I think that I think a lot of it is to send a message to council. Basically, if you were even thinking about it, don't think about it, or we're going to fine you or harm you in some way. And I think that's undemocratic. So all of it, I think, is incredibly unfortunate and disturbing. But we're continuing to look at where the options are there. And in terms of the public discussion, sans those conversations, and I'm certainly always happy to have more conversation. I think we have basically talked this issue, to death in so many ways. We just need to move on it. But in every single one of my 14 community conversations, excuse me, in every one of my 14 community conversations, we had folks talk about that issue. Folks show up who were in support of leaving the monuments, folks showing up in support of taking them down. We had that conversation ad nauseum from July through October. So I don't know really, frankly, what else there is to say on the issue that we don't already know. I think that, there are a lot of folks who have suggested we simply contextualize what we have, but then where does the agreement come on what that contextualization would be? I think that if you're going to contextualize something like that, it would have to be in the strongest possible terms of what slavery was and what it did, and that it was, frankly, just everything wrong that we could possibly have done to the African American community. And so I don't know that we're ever going to have an agreement on that either. So sometimes you just have to do what is the right thing, and as far as you can see. And I hope that at some point we can get to the point where people realize the right thing is not to have those monuments in the middle of a black community that has already suffered greatly. And as you see public opinion continue to move on this issue, I think the mass shooting over in Newtown, where the just litany of hate was unleashed by that individual who committed that crime, I think people are realizing more and more that the more we normalize, the more we say these things are okay and they're acceptable in our community, frankly, the further behind we are, and we need to address this once and for all.
Got a bunch of callers waiting here. Michael from Jacksonville has a question about money being spent on the University of Florida. Good morning, Michael. Welcome to First Coast Connect. Go ahead.
Good morning. I realize that I'm spitting in the wind, but I want to make a comment that we all welcome the University of Florida interacting with our community. I mean, it's a flagship university. It's a great university, tremendous resources in every way. But what's being proposed here for Jacksonville is kind of nebulous, and really it doesn't address a specific concern that the community has, and some of this money is ours. And it seemed to me that if we looked at what the community needs from the University of Florida, it's a dental school. We have real problems in our community providing a dental care, especially for our young people. And it's been shown that if you don't take care of young people's teeth when they're young, that these problems will carry into adulthood, and the problems will become the basis for other systemic problems. So, as I say, I realize that I'm probably a day late and a dollar short here, but if we were to have a community debate on this subject, I think a dental school would draw a lot of support. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thoughts, Mayor?
Well, yeah, thank you for that, Michael. I certainly am not opposed to a dental school, but I think what the University of Florida is proposing here is something that is really critical to keeping our youth in Jacksonville and really to growing that. Honestly, I think that is critical to our growth in the way that we want it here in the city. We want our young people to stay, and we want them to raise our families here. And I think having more graduate level opportunities, especially from a university like the University of Florida, is huge. We know that financial technology is something that is going to be, and not even going to be, is already huge in our city. And the more opportunities that we can offer on a graduate level for young people in so many of the spaces that we're talking about there is I think, important. So I'm absolutely not opposed to discussing a dental school, but I do think that what the University of Florida would bring, especially to the urban core, would be a lot.
Saying that as a Seminole even, is that right?
Well, see, and that should just tell you right there just how much I believe that, because that's hard for me to say, as you know.
We've got a comment from Sarah Winkler on Facebook with some urgency, I guess, asking about removing the statues before DeSantis, the governor, Ron DeSantis, makes it illegal. I have a question for you about that. I mean, I think we all remember during the summer of the George Floyd protests, Mayor Lenny Curry swept in the dark of night and kind of took down the topper on that Confederate monument in the center of the city, in front of City Hall. What is preventing you from doing something similar with the controversial statue in Springfield, the Women of the Southland?
Well, first of all, the council has now said that $500,000 that we have that is set aside for that purpose has to go through council, and that is something council is not interested in doing. I mean, there is more to that monument than what there was to taking down that one in the middle of James Weldon Johnson Park. So, that's really a big piece right there. There has to be a willingness, at least in terms of that pot of money, for council to want to revisit that.
Owen from Jacksonville is giving us a call. He's got a question about liquid natural gas. Good morning, Owen. Go ahead.
Oh, yes, ma'am. How you doing? Good morning. I'm driving, so hopefully you can hear me. I recently moved here about 4 months ago and didn't realize I moved on top of a liquefied natural gas facility. And I was wondering if Jacksonville had plans to build another one in Jacksonville, and has someone really looked at the health hazards that it could cause in the long term?
Thank you for the question, Owen. I know, Mayor, there's discussion about a fuel depot and some controversy on the city's north side.
Yeah, that is still under discussion, and that has not been completely litigated yet. But in terms of health hazards for that gentleman, I don't know where he's talking about or what exactly his concerns are. But obviously, we have gone to liquefied natural gas in some instances to help us to wean off of the hazards of diesel and other fossil fuels that are causing us a problem in terms of climate. So that is something that we are using and will probably use more of in the future.
We've got a call
until we can get ourselves, more onto solar and other more clean fuels.
We're just going to try to get on a few more calls. We got Brad from the Beaches calling. Good morning, Brad. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor. I had a question about affordable housing. I hear it in the news all the time. I see where we're going to give millions of dollars in grants to support affordable or workforce housing. My question is, we have the Save Our Homes, the 3% cap for homeowners, but for landlords, the tax department's going up that full 10%. I believe that we're taxing the tenants out. And would you ever consider a program where instead of having to grant millions of dollars worth of grants to people to build large new buildings, you just work with existing landlords to give them some sort of discount on their taxes? Again, my property was built in 1982. It's got a 1982 door handle. It's got a new roof, so we can keep insurance. But nothing's been improved. Yet for the past few years, because of Jacksonville's success, they've gone up the full 10% on taxes every year.
Good question, Brad. I'm going to just let her answer because we only have a few moments left here. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, listen, I'll tell you, I am open to anything that will help to solve this problem from any angle. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer here. But I do understand the plight of the landlords as well. I understand that this is a two-way street, and we've got to address it from every angle. So certainly would be open to any discussion on any angle that would help us to tackle this problem.
Mayor Donna Deegan, thank you for joining us for this monthly chat. We appreciate it. A lot of questions that we still have on the table, but we'll get to them next time and feel better.
Thanks, Ann, so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too.